Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone.
Chased down by Beal in the corner for three, gets fouled and hits.
Welcome to DC.
Well, they tag him out.
You know where you're at, the USA Cap. You're taking it slightly, I'm taking it slightly. Now how you gon' act on you gon' be right back. Well, we gon' be right here, we gon' be right here. We ain't going nowhere. Welcome to DC. DC, the home of Chuck Brown. Oh, you don't know the sound? Well, let me break it down.
What's good, everyone? It's Noah back on DMV Sports Zone to talk about the Washington Capitals and Washington Wizards for the Week 4 fantasy recap. I know it's been a pretty couple interesting storylines to follow, and they haven't really changed that much. I know I've talked about in previous weeks about the Ilya Samsonov-Vida Vanacek young goaltending battle for the starting role for the Washington Capitals, as well as a lot of the new young guns on the Wizards like Kuzma, Dinwiddie, Harrell. But let's talk about somebody that's been a staple of the Washington, D.C. sports scene, and arguably the greatest athlete to ever play for any of the Washington teams and franchises. That man is Alexander Ovechkin. Before I get into a little more detail about him, all my fantasy sports data and analytics comes from Sporty Eye. We had our public beta this past Friday open up. Already gotten a lot of people on the platform, so if you're interested on optimizing your fantasy sports lineups, the link is in the bio. Without further ado, let's get started. So let's kick things off where I left off. Alex Ovechkin, 36 years old. As of last night, just eclipsed Brett Hull for fifth most goals all time. Alex Ovechkin is the greatest goal scorer in the history of the National Hockey League. I don't care about the stats. He's going to pass Gretzky. At 36 years old, people talk about LeBron being ageless. Alex Ovechkin is 6'3", 235 pounds, plays physical, is averaging over 22 minutes a game as a forward, leads the league in goals 11, and has 21 points. He's already almost halfway to his season total last year in 45 games in the lockout shortened season. Can Ovechkin maintain this pace? Absolutely. With the time on ice that he's getting so many opportunities on even strength as well as on the power play. More importantly, Evgeny Kuznetsov is having a breakout comeback season after he's been in decline recently, and people were really worried if Kuznetsov would ever bounce back, but Kuznetsov is finding Ovechkin. With Backstrom, Oshie, sometimes wavering in terms of injury status, Ovechkin now is a consistent playmaker that's feeding him where he likes it, in his office, the left circle. And more importantly, his total goal percentage, shooting percentage is very efficient on even strength. He's always been a great power play goal scorer, but his best seasons have come when he's shooting at least 15% in even strength. He's shooting at 18% right now. Ovechkin is going to easily eclipse 50 goals, and in terms of injuries, he's one of the most durable players this game has ever seen. He barely misses games. He's a physical player, remains efficient, and nothing much else to say about him. What else can I say? He's brought a Stanley Cup, the first in franchise history, to Washington, D.C. Another unrelated fantasy statistic, Washington, D.C. DMV area had over triple the number of youth registered for USA Hockey, meaning they're playing hockey at an organized level since he came into the league in 2005. That's incredible. He's literally changed the culture of hockey, not only in the DC area, but in the entire country as a whole. So keep a close eye on Ovechkin. If you drafted him, congratulations. He will arguably finish as the #1 fantasy forward in the season in terms of fantasy. and he benefits all his other line mates. As you can see, Wilson, Kuznetsov, Oshie when healthy, Backstrom, all these players benefit tremendously from his presence. A quick update on the goaltending situation, however. That's a little bit of a bigger question. Vanacek, Samsonov still battling it out for who's going to be the starter. Now Vanacek seems to get the edge, but neither goaltender has really shined. I know Samsonov got a shutout last week, but it was only an 18-save shutout, benefiting from a good team. You know, they're 6-2-4. They have a lot of overtime losses, but they'll still count toward points on the standings. Like as predicted, all of the future matchups for the Capitals usually will be in favor of the Capitals, but in particular this week, they're going to be facing a little bit of tougher schedule. Yes, they're going to be facing the Penguins come Thursday, but the reality is all Capitals players are confident if you have them, all the fantasy relevant ones at least, and you continue to roll Samsonov or Vanacek, confident they can at least get a dub, and they have a solid blue line around them with Carlson heating up, and like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, Jensen and Orlov being great depth along with Schultz. So nothing much else to say. The Capitals, smooth sailing, Ovechkin, fantasy gold. In terms of the Wizards, things have cooled off a little. They've actually pulled a big win off over the Bucks, but from a fantasy perspective, it doesn't always matter about record. Goalies benefit in fantasy hockey from the record, win-loss record. But the Wizards, players don't get extra bonuses if they win games in fantasy. Unless you do a special rotisserie league. So in terms of the outlook for this next week, the typical players that I've already mentioned, Dinwiddie, Harrell, Kuzma, Gafford, they're all probably going to be picked up already off the waiver wire, or they were drafted. If any of those players remain, of course, pick them up. Bradley Beal, I don't even need to mention that. He definitely was drafted. Arguably, he might be as high as the late of the first round, late second round, depending on how deep your league is. In terms of any fantasy sleepers, I, again, keep an eye on Rui Hachimura and Thomas Bryant. So Rui Hachimura is supposed to come back to the lineup in the next 2 weeks from his personal, injury, step away from the team situation. And with Kuzma looking a little inconsistent, there is room for Hachimura to get his starting spot back, or at minimum be a very productive player off the bench. He's only owned in 27% of ESPN fantasy leagues, so really suggest keep a close eye on him. If you have an IR spot open, maybe stash him and wait, because he can have a big impact. In terms of Bryant, his situation is less clear. He's going to come apparently in the middle of December, but the problem with him is as a 5 or a 4, he has to face some stiff competition from Harrell, from Kuzma, from Gafford, from Hachimura, and he doesn't have the benefit of being able to play the 3 like Hachimura. So Bryant's going to have a lot of competition. And on top of that, don't forget about the worst contract of all time, Davis Bertans, still contributing at a decent amount for the Wizards. So there's not a lot of front court minutes to go around. Especially if Kisper continues to improve and takes some more minutes at the 3, I don't see where Bryant really fits. Very curious to see if he gets traded when he becomes healthy. But for now, if there's a stash player, it's Hachimura. Bryant is an avoid type of player. In terms of any other fantasy relevant players that have changed from the weeks, the only one I could really think of is Raul Neto. But in terms of his production, he's more of a categories depth specialist. He'll get steals. He'll get a decent amount of assists. He doesn't get rebounds. He doesn't score that well. Best left off the waiver wire for the most part. I know that Dinwiddie rested earlier in the season, but as you see, unless they have back-to-backs, Dinwiddie doesn't rest. So Neto in real life is a great value point guard. In terms of fantasy, unless you're in a very deep league that counts a lot for steals and assists, then he's not really a value add in my opinion. He's still, owned in less than 5% of fantasy leagues. So, if you're in a 12-team league, you never know. Find some value in him. But in terms of his projections for the rest of the season, in terms of his analytics or score plus, doesn't look great. Just a really average, mediocre type of player. But you never know. Dinwiddie goes off of, an injury. Neto's the one to step up. Even if Holiday starts, Neto's the more valuable of the two guards in terms of the Wizards. So I guess you could stash him, but it's not like fantasy football. You really can't afford to have a stash and wait type of player. So just, continue to enjoy his good real life play and focus on the fantasy relevant players for now for the Washington Wizards. And with that, that's pretty much a wrap up of things. Really nice to have some good news to talk about again with the Wizards and the Capitals. Tune in this coming Thursday with the Ravens and football team both playing now. I know they alternated buys. There's going to be some exciting analytics to provide for fantasy football. Again, this is Noah. Thanks for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.